You know the feeling. You tried, you stepped forward before anyone else did, and you stumbled. They laughed, they whispered, they wrote you off. The world stamped you with one word, failure. And in that moment, you believed it. You believed that failing early meant you were finished, that your story had already been written, that success belonged to the ones who never slipped, the ones who seemed untouchable from the start. That's the lie. Society worships the early winners, the prodigies, the overnight millionaires, the young geniuses. They plaster their faces on magazine covers and shove their stories into your throat as proof that you've already missed your chance. And if you failed early, then you must be cursed, marked, doomed to live in their shadow forever. But what if I told you the opposite was true? What if I told you that those who fail first carry the greatest secret of all? Napoleon Hill, the man who spent his life decoding the laws of success, never saw failure as the end. He called it temporary defeat, a disguise, a test, a weapon handed only to those strong enough to wield it. He wrote that every great success is born out of failure, and not success that comes easy, but success that comes late, forged in humiliation, rejection, and doubt. Think of it. Edison failed thousands of times before the light bulb. Lincoln lost election after election before becoming president. Nietzsche collapsed into madness before his words reshaped philosophy forever. Failure is not a grave. It is a forge, and the ones who stumble first, who fall earlier than anyone else, they are the ones who secretly carry the deepest fire. But here's the truth society never tells you. Early failure doesn't destroy you. It breaks you open. It strips away illusions. It exposes you to ridicule. Yes, but in that ridicule, you gain something no early winner ever touches. You gain scars. You gain silence. You gain the chance to build a strength that cannot be copied. Because while they laugh at you now, while they point and whisper, you are absorbing something they will never understand. Persistence, perspective, the ability to rise again without applause. And when the world finally sees you return, they won't see the years of mockery or the nights of despair. They will only see someone who cannot be broken, someone who should have died in the fire, but instead learned to control it. That's why this video exists, because you've been lied to. You were told that failing early means you've lost. But Hill knew the opposite. He knew that those who fall first secretly win in the end. This is your initiation, not into weakness, not into shame, but into the hidden law of failure, the one that turns humiliation into hidden dominance. And if you're ready to understand it, then listen closely. They told you that if you don't succeed young, you don't succeed at all. That success has an expiration date. That if you haven't achieved something spectacular by 25, 30, then you are already behind, already forgotten, already buried. That's the cult you live under. The cult of early winners. From the moment you could walk, they dangled examples in front of you. The child prodigy playing piano at 4. The dropout millionaire at 21. The athlete breaking records before his body has even finished growing. These are your idols, not because they represent truth, but because they represent control. Society glorifies speed. It worships acceleration. It bows down to the story of the one who never stumbled, never hesitated, never failed. Why? Because it keeps you chained. It convinces you that time is your enemy, that every year you don't make it is another nail in your coffin, that you must run, panic, scramble, or be erased. And when you fall early, when you stumble before the finish line, that's your first death. It feels permanent. It feels final. The death of reputation, the death of credibility, the death of the identity you thought you had. You've seen it. Maybe you've lived it. The one who tried too soon, failed too hard, and was quietly erased. The one nobody mentions anymore. The name people avoid because it reminds them of fragility. That's how the cult keeps its power, by telling you, fail once and you are finished. Fail early and you will be mocked forever. But Napoleon Hill called this illusion by its real name, temporary defeat. He wrote that failure is not final, that it exists only to test the persistence of the human spirit, that every fall is a signal, a question whispered in the dark. Will you continue, or will you crawl back into silence? Hill spent decades studying the greats, and he saw the same pattern repeat. The world bows to early winners in the beginning. But in the end, it is the scarred, the broken, the rejected, the ones who tasted the first death, who rise untouchable. Look at Thomas Edison. Thousands of failed experiments. Newspapers mocked him. Colleagues ridiculed him. Yet each failure was only temporary defeat, another step toward the invention that would rewire civilization. Look at Abraham Lincoln. Bankrupt, rejected, defeated in elections again and again. A laughingstock. Yet when the time came, he emerged hardened, impenetrable, unshakable, strong enough to lead a nation through its darkest war. Society does not want you to remember these stories, because if you truly understood them, the cult of early winners would collapse. Here's the truth they hide. Early success is fragile. It breeds arrogance. It feeds on applause. And applause makes you weak. Because applause convinces you that you are already complete. But early failure kills you once. And in that death, you are forced to choose. Remain buried or crawl back stronger. That is the first death. And if you survive it, you are no longer afraid. This is why society despises late bloomers. This is why culture mocks the slow starter, because they cannot control someone who has already faced death. Someone who has already been broken, humiliated, discarded, and yet still rises. Nietzsche once wrote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." But the cult of early winners twisted this. They tell you what kills your reputation kills you forever. They want you to believe there is no resurrection. But you've already died once. And that makes you dangerous, because now you know what they don't. The first death is not an ending. It is a passage. And once you pass through it, you no longer fear being forgotten. You no longer fear mockery. You no longer fear time. And that is when society begins to fear you, because you cannot be controlled by their false idols. You cannot be broken by their timelines. You no longer belong to the cult of early winners. You belong to something deeper, something darker. The law that Napoleon Hill uncovered, that temporary defeat is not defeat at all. It is the secret trial that separates the fragile from the unstoppable. And if you have already failed early, then you have already begun. Failure is not weakness. It is initiation. Napoleon Hill understood this better than anyone. He wrote that persistence is not born in comfort. Persistence is not born in easy victories, or in applause, or in effortless wins. Persistence is born in the fire. And that fire always comes first in the form of defeat. When you fail early, the world tells you that you are broken. But here is the hidden law. You are not broken. You are being tempered, just as iron must enter the flames before it becomes a sword. The human spirit must enter humiliation, rejection, and collapse before it becomes unbreakable. Early success is fragile. It creates glass warriors, shining on the outside, but brittle within. They rise fast because they have never been tested. They shine because the spotlight never left them. But the moment life delivers its first strike, they shatter. You've seen it. The young star who climbs too quickly, then vanishes after one setback. The entrepreneur who rides the wave of timing but collapses when the storm comes. The genius student who never struggled, who breaks down the moment he meets resistance. They look like kings, but they were never forged. Now look at those who failed early. Look at the scars they carry. Edison did not stumble once or twice. He failed thousands of times before a single light burned. Each failure did not weaken him. It hardened him. Each rejection did not silence him. It fed him. Abraham Lincoln was defeated in business. He was defeated in politics. He was defeated in public opinion. Over and over he was erased. Yet every failure became another layer of armor. And when he finally rose to power, he carried with him the resilience no early success could ever grant. Nietzsche rejected, ignored, dismissed as a failure in his time. His books sold in the dozens, not the thousands. He was considered irrelevant, broken, unworthy. But the very rejection that silenced him in life made his words immortal in death, because he wrote from the fire, not from applause. This is the hidden law. That early failure is not a curse. It is an initiation ritual. It strips away the illusions of easy victory. It kills the ego that thrives on recognition. It forces you to stand in silence with nothing but your scars and ask yourself, will I continue or will I break? Those who continue become untouchable, because once you have been burned, you cannot be burned again. Once you have walked through humiliation, rejection, and despair, you stop fearing them. And when you no longer fear them, the world has no chain strong enough to hold you. This is why Hill called failure temporary defeat, because it is not final. It is a disguise. The fire looks like destruction, but in reality, it is purification. It removes the weak. It hardens the rare. The man who succeeds too early believes he has arrived. The man who fails early learns that arrival does not exist, that the road is longer, darker, and more brutal than anyone admits, and yet he walks it anyway. That is why early failure is the greatest advantage, because it forces you to face death when you are still unprepared. It forces you to experience loss when you still have everything to gain. It kills your illusions before they can kill you later. And when you rise from it, you rise as something different. Not fragile, not arrogant, not desperate for applause, but forged. Fire before forge, defeat before dominance, death before immortality. That is the hidden law. And if you have failed early, you are already inside the fire. Do not run from it. Do not curse it. Stand inside it. Because one day, when the early winters begin to break, you will still be standing. And that is when the world will understand. You were never weak. You were being made untouchable. Failure leaves scars, not the kind the world can see, but the kind etched deep into your mind. At first, you see them as shame, as proof of weakness, as reminders that you once tried and once fell. You hide them, you bury them, you pretend they don't exist. But here is the truth. Those scars are your advantage, because scars make you invisible, and invisibility is freedom. The world worships the shining, the perfect, the undefeated. It does not notice the broken man. It does not fear him. It does not expect him to rise. That is your gift, because when you are underestimated, you are free to move without resistance. Machiavelli wrote that the wise prince should always disguise his true strength, to appear harmless, to appear weaker than he is. Why? Because men waste their guard on the obvious threat and ignore the hidden one. That is the dark advantage of the broken. You are the hidden one. You no longer need to chase applause. You no longer need to impress. You move through the world unseen. And while the world forgets you, you sharpen yourself in silence. You build strength in the shadows. You learn patience. You learn strategy. Carl Jung called this the integration of the shadow. He believed that the parts of yourself you deny, your pain, your rage, your failures, once integrated, become your greatest source of power. Most people never do this. They hide from their scars. They collapse under their shame. They spend their lives pretending. But you have been forced to face it. You cannot hide from your scars because they are carved into you, and that means you have already begun integrating them. You are closer to wholeness than the ones who never fell. Think of it. The undefeated man is always fragile. His strength depends on being seen as strong, but the broken man, he does not care what others see. He has already lived invisible. He has already been underestimated. He has already learned to survive without approval. And when the time comes when he finally steps into the light, the world will not be ready. This is the paradox. The one mocked for his failures, ignored for his silence, discarded for his scars, becomes the most dangerous man of all because he has learned what they have not. He has learned to move without needing recognition. He has learned to win without anyone watching. The underestimated man carries no burden of expectation. That is why he is untouchable. The early winners are trapped. They must keep proving themselves. They must cling to the image of perfection. They cannot afford failure because their entire identity rests on being seen as flawless. One crack and they are undone. But you were cracked from the beginning. You were broken early. You have nothing left to protect, nothing left to prove, nothing left to fear. And that is why you are free. The scars they mocked you for are the very proof of your strength. The invisibility they cursed you with is the very cover that gives you strategy. The underestimation they fed you is the very thing that makes your rise inevitable. This is your dark advantage, the gift of being broken, the power of being unseen, the weapon of being underestimated. When the world finally notices you, it will be too late, because by then, you will no longer be the broken man they laughed at. You will be the untouchable man they never saw coming. Napoleon Hill believed that failure was not the enemy. The true enemy was surrender. He called it temporary defeat. The moment when life knocks you down, not to destroy you, but to test whether you will rise again. And Hill saw the same law repeated in every man who ever achieved greatness. The secret weapon was not talent, not luck, not brilliance. It was persistence. Persistence is not glamorous. It does not glitter. It does not get celebrated on magazine covers. Persistence is slow, relentless, brutal, and only those who have failed early even understand its necessity. When you succeed too soon, you never learn it. You never have to. Your path is paved with applause. Every door opens. Every effort is rewarded. But when the applause stops, when resistance finally comes, those who never learned persistence collapse. They never built endurance. They never built resilience. Their success was shallow because it was never tested. But you were tested from the start. Your first attempts were shattered. Your early efforts ridiculed. You were forced to endure silence when no one believed in you. And in that silence, you built something the early winners never touched, the will to continue without recognition. That is persistence, to move when no one claps, to act when no one sees, to keep striking when nothing breaks. Hill called this definiteness of purpose, the ability to lock onto a vision and refuse to let go no matter how many times you fall. He wrote that every setback carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. But only the man who persists long enough will ever see the seed grow. This is why early failure is a hidden blessing. It forces you to confront the long game. It forces you to develop patience while others are still intoxicated by quick wins. It forces you to build an identity that does not depend on speed, but on endurance. Think of a tree. The one that grows too fast shoots upward with weak roots, vulnerable to every storm. But the one that struggles against hard soil, against drought, against wind. Its roots grow deep, its trunk becomes unshakable, and when the storm comes, the fast tree falls while the slow one stands. That is you. Hill believed persistence could transmute failure into power. Every rejection becomes fuel. Every defeat becomes pressure that hardens you. Every humiliation becomes energy to rise again. This is not motivation. This is chemistry. This is transformation. The ones who succeed too soon peak too soon. But the ones who fail early, they are built for the long game. They learn to endure longer, fight harder, last beyond the temporary victories of others. That is why your failures are not curses. They are compounding interest. Every scar you carry is another layer of resilience. Every no you endured is another reason you cannot be broken. And when time tests everyone, when hardship finally arrives, those who rose quickly will collapse. But you will still be there, because persistence is your weapon, and time is your ally. Failure is not random. It is ritual. It is the shadow test. When you fail early, you are not simply unlucky. You have been chosen for an initiation most men will never face. It is brutal. It is humiliating. It strips you of illusion, of pride, of every comforting lie you once believed. And in that stripping, it asks a single question: will you bend or will you break? This is the hidden right of the late bloomer. Every culture, every age had its trials. The Spartan boy left in the wilderness, the tribal youth sent into the dark alone, the alchemist forced to confront failure after failure in the laboratory. These were not punishments. They were tests. Your early failures are no different. They are not the end of your story. They are the initiation that marks you as one of the few who will not peak early, but later. And later is always stronger. Napoleon Hill himself knew this trial. Before he wrote Think and Grow Rich, he was crushed by rejection after rejection. He spent 20 years studying failure, obsessed with why men rose and fell. He lived in poverty. He was dismissed, ignored, discarded. But that was his shadow test. Without it, he could never have discovered the principles that reshaped millions of lives. It is no accident that greatness comes late, because only those who endure the shadow test are worthy of it. Think of the phoenix. It does not rise until it is burned. It does not shine until it has turned to ash. That is the price of rebirth. That is the proof that death is not the end, but the threshold. Think of the alchemist. He spends years turning lead to gold. Every failed experiment is not wasted. It is necessary. It teaches him the laws of transformation until one day the impossible happens, and only then does he hold the secret in his hands. You are the same. Each failure you endured is not wasted. Each humiliation you suffered is not meaningless. They are the ingredients. They are the fire. They are the ashes that prove you are being remade. The shadow test is terrifying because it feels endless. You watch others succeed. You watch them celebrated while you remain invisible. You feel the urge to give up, to surrender, to accept that maybe they were right about you. But here's the truth. The very fact that you are still here, still watching, still listening, means you have not broken. It means you are already inside the elite circle, the late bloomers, the ones who endure, the ones who bend but never snap. Most people never pass the test. They collapse. They accept defeat as permanent. They join the crowd and spend the rest of their lives kneeling. But you are still searching. That alone separates you. That alone proves you are marked for more. The shadow test is the filter. It removes the fragile. It removes the arrogant. It removes the weak. And what remains is rare. That is why late bloomers